What are the roots of prosperity gospel and how and where did this teaching start, Pastor?
When I began my research on the prosperity gospel, I read a couple of books and they seem to suggest that all these teachings come from cultic sources. And I was pretty much convinced with what they said, and I held to that view. But as I kept reading more and more literature, I understood that the origins of the prosperity gospel is quite complex. Definitely, most of the scholars will agree that the prosperity gospel began in the US. It originated in the US, definitely. Most of the scholars agree on this matter, but that's where the agreement ends. So there are different opinions when it comes to the origins of the prosperity gospel. For instance, when you study this whole subject, as I was doing my doctoral thesis, I realized that there are three main sources for the prosperity gospel. The first one is the prosperity gospel does have its roots in metaphysical cults. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, what is this new term, metaphysical cults? So, what is the meaning of metaphysical cults? Before that, we need to look at the meaning of metaphysics. Metaphysics refers to a system of religious thought which teaches that the spiritual realm alone is real. They deny the physical realm, and they say that the spiritual realm is superior and spiritual realm is real. And they say that whatever happens in the spiritual realm affects the physical realm. Okay, so that's what metaphysics basically means. And a metaphysical cult is any group that teaches that spiritual realm alone is real. So when you look at some of the literature of these metaphysical cult leaders, and when you compare the teaching with, say, somebody like Kenneth Hagin or Kenneth Copeland, there are so many similarities. So we cannot deny the fact that prosperity gospel has drawn, that this teaching has drawn from metaphysical cults. But we also have to emphasize that that is not the only source for the prosperity gospel teaching. Secondly, some claim that the prosperity gospel derives its teachings from a major healing revival, which was led by some prominent evangelical leaders of the 19th century. This was known as the faith cure movement in the 19th century. Again, when you look at some of these leaders, they're all evangelicals. They believe in all the core doctrines of the Bible, but they emphasized a lot on healing. Somebody like Simpson, for instance, had very strong views on healing, very strong views. And many of these prosperity preachers use his material, use his quotes and teaching. So definitely prosperity gospel has its origins in the evangelical faith cure movement, which began in the 19th century. Not only that, the prosperity gospel has its roots in the extreme form of Pentecostalism. Now, what is Pentecostalism? Of course, many of us will know this Pentecostal movement began in the early 20th century. It has its roots in the holiness movement, and Pentecostals believe in speaking in tongues as the initial physical evidence. We believe in the gifts of the Spirit and all of that. So when you look at Pentecostal teachings, yes, we do believe in healing. We do believe that God blesses His people, meets the needs, of course, but early Pentecostals mostly emphasized on healing rather than material prosperity. And what the prosperity preachers have done is they've taken some of these Pentecostal teachings on physical healing to an extreme. So definitely that is another source of prosperity gospel teaching. Apart from these things, Pastor Shine, there are also other factors which led to the growth and development of these teachings. For example, in the mid-20th century, there was a lot of liberalism out there. I mean, there was a lot of emphasis on liberalism, and liberalism basically denied the authority of the Bible. And some of these preachers went to the other extremes and said, the Bible is true, which is, of course, we believe Bible is true. But then they kind of countered liberalism through a lot of supernatural elements in the teaching. They started talking about miracles and confession and healing and stuff like that. So it was kind of a reaction to liberalism as well. Also, when the charismatic movement began in the 1960s, it was fertile ground for the prosperity gospel. There were some organizations like the Full Gospel Businessmen's International Fellowship, which actually promoted this teaching among charismatics. So it went into the mainline churches and it became popular among charismatic circles. So that also led to the growth of the prosperity gospel teaching. Also, the physical well-being and material prosperity became a dominant theme in American culture. We talk about the American dream, for instance. People want to go to the US, settle, they have a good life, material prosperity, well-being, these are emphasized. These values are highly emphasized in the American culture. And naturally, these values crept into the church as well. So people readily accepted the teaching that God will prosper them and bless them, give them safety, protection, and prosperity, all of these things. So naturally, people accepted this, readily grasped it, embraced it, I would say. And also, when it comes to the origin of these teachings and the growth of these teachings, many of these prosperity preachers use media very effectively. Even today, you look at most of the Christian channels, the people who appear on television or internet for that matter, the ones who are in the forefront of using media are these prosperity preachers. Their writings and their videos are out there. And the moment people get to hear these things over and over again, they believe that it is true because it becomes normative. So media has made the prosperity gospel acceptable in that sense. So people started believing that. Also, when I think about the Indian context, in our country, our people believe that a certain goddess is a goddess of prosperity or money or blessing. So when people start preaching that if you come to Jesus, you will become prosperous, you will have good health and safety and stuff like that, people readily embrace it because, okay, if Jesus can dispense these gifts, I will follow Jesus because Jesus seems attractive. Jesus is going to give all these gifts. So people already have that kind of a mindset, and we are in that kind of a culture. So that's why Indian prosperity preachers are making big money because people already are looking for financial blessings, healing, and stuff like that. So this is what briefly I would say are the origins of the prosperity gospel. But the three main sources, as I mentioned, are the metaphysical cults and the faith cure movement, as well as the extreme form of Pentecostalism.